And it is time once again for another AEW Dynamite review here on the MrWarrenHayes Show. Greetings and salutations. It is I, Warren, and it is Thursday. It is March the 19th, 2026. We are going to be reviewing last night's edition of Dynamite. But first and foremost, hi, how you doing? I'm glad you're here. Hope you're having a good week so far. Hope this is a good way to start ringing in your weekend. If you do have a weekend like everyone else, unless you work in an industry that, doesn't have that, well, if it's not, well, I hope you have a good work week. I don't know why I try to make these things more complicated than they are. I just want everyone to be happy that it's Thursday and that you're listening to my Dynamite review. That's all there is to it. Astute Dynamite review knowers have observed already that, Warren is at his desk. He's not in the armchair over there, which means that he is reviewing the Dynamite immediately after the show on Wednesday, as opposed to recording it on the Thursday as he usually does. Correct. That is absolutely correct. I've got a very busy Thursday ahead of myself. And then, a little peek behind the curtain, my internet completely flatlined today. I mean, completely flatlined. Spent an hour on the phone with support, and they have to send it. They have to send a tech over to get it to fix. You see, that's what you see over there in the corner there. I pulled out, I had to pull my modem out of its hidey hole. And so, I just left it there because the guy's going to come and fuck with it anyway. So, what's the point? And that's only happening on Friday on top of that. So I've got a couple of days here hanging around, hotspotting off of my cell phone. So it's been, it nonetheless. So despite the fact that the internet's not working, I've got a busy day tomorrow, Thursday. And I will work it out thanks to the magic of hotspotting. I will be able to provide this recording for you all, so that you can enjoy my thoughts on a Dynamite which I didn't like. There you go. And that's essentially the theme of the show, folks, is for weeks upon weeks, months even, we've been sitting here, we've been talking with each other, and week after week, these Dynamites have all been good to great, even in some circumstances, just outright excellent. Just on an incredible streak of great wrestling television. And I'm afraid that I have to announce to you tonight that the streak is over. I don't think this was a bad Dynamite. I don't think it was, because there's stuff here that did happen on the show which were legitimate bright spots. But I don't think it was a good Dynamite either. Like I said, since the Continental Classic, I think AEW Dynamite has been on one of its best sustained runs of its existence. Week after week, the show had been built around wrestling with purpose and forward momentum in a way that made it genuinely essential viewing. Not all that long ago, I was here talking, saying that, that Dynamite has that must-watch feel to it now, right? That it started returning, where if you weren't watching, you were missing out on stuff, right? Revolution 2026 was the natural peak of that. That's what we were building towards, and a legitimately great pay-per-view. My review is available. It's on the MrWarrenHayes Show podcast, which was released yesterday. The cliff notes of it is that it's, to me, it's one of the greatest in-ring pay-per-views that I have ever seen in all eras put together, all promotions. It is just one of the greatest in-ring performances, top to bottom, that as far as the show goes, a wrestling show goes, that I have seen. And it gave us real emotional stakes. It gave us great wrestling. It gave us a match of the year. And it's the kind of card that when it ends, then you're rubbing your hands and you're going, oh shit, I can't wait to see what's next. And what's next was, the March 18 edition of AEW Dynamite. See that like the most like I said, the most damning thing about this week's Dynamite is not that it was bad. It's more like it felt like a completely different direction has been established as opposed to everything we had been used to since November 2025. The AEW that had been on a roll since the C2, where it's trusts its wrestlers. I'll get it out. That trusts its wrestlers to treat the ring as its primary storytelling vehicle was not here. The show was built around, segments and backstage stuff and taped things and promo, long in-ring promos, and maybe some of the stuff that was on there was also a little self-indulgent on top of that. You kind of was hoping for that same type of very clear direction on a lot of the things that had been established not that they haven't been setting up things for the future or even up till Dynasty, because they have, but we didn't reconcile really anything. Like MJF was not there live. He cut a tremendous promo. Don't get me wrong. He cut a tremendous post pay-per-view promo, but he wasn't there. Hangman Page wasn't there as well to lament his loss, give us a feel of what was next for him. He wasn't there either. Of course, it was revealed by Fightful Select earlier today that Hangman was going to be taking some time off. Not quite sure how much time he's supposed to be gone. It could be weeks, could be months. No one quite knows. But he was essentially written off TV, and I mentioned it on the review. I didn't necessarily have a problem with him going away. He was carried out on a stretcher, so it's a stretcher job. If you want to, it's a good write-off point. That's what they're for. But he could have hobbled to the ring, all taped up and bruised, and give us a sob story. Give us an emotional sob story promo, and then hit the. I don't know. The Darby car stunt and the swerve in ring segment. And the belt tug of war at the end. I know it wasn't like an actual tug of war, but you know what I'm talking about at the very end. And even the fact ending with that promo at the end, it all had a quality of self-indulgence that's been absent from the product for months now. When you're used to the show trusting the work, a night that's built more on, I get the entertainment side of it, the theatrics of it, I guess, it lands a little hard. You're like, oh shit, we made a hard turn here. And I'm not quite sure I enjoyed this direction. So, look, the streak is broken, okay? The streak of great Dynamites, I'm declaring it, is officially broken. But I want to emphasize this was not a bad show. This was not a terrible wrestling show. I thought the main event was a lot of fun. I thought, of course, Will Ospreay returning was a highlight. I enjoyed Davis and Bailey as well. But the whole package tonight just felt like a step backward. It really clashed with the mojo that the company had, that over the past months. But I'm also not going to. So as much as I'm ambivalent and maybe a little disappointed in this episode of Dynamite, I'm not going to sit here and say this was bad, it sucked, because it didn't. And I'm especially not going to say, well, here we go again. This might be just, this might be a speed bump. We've already announced Swerve versus Kenny 2 for next week, I believe, right, in St. Louis. So that's going to be a substantial. That's going to be a very substantial match. That's something that, I think everyone can agree, yes, we're very much looking forward to. So we'll see. We'll see if there's a quick course correction. We'll see if this is just if all we needed was just like a 1 week event like this to hit the reset button, or is it going to continue drifting in this direction? That's where I'm at. That's ultimately that's the high level thoughts of this. That's the high level thoughts of this Dynamite. Might as well go right ahead and start reviewing everything else. Oh wait, before we actually start reviewing, we didn't even do like the business side of things. We didn't even talk about the metadata of the show, essentially, of this AEW Dynamite that occurred at the Save Mart Center at Fresno State in Fresno, California. 3,584 tickets were distributed, according to WrestleTix, of course. If we compare to the last time that AEW was here, which was practically a year ago, March 12, 2025, right? Yeah, exactly a year ago. The 3,220 tickets had been distributed. So a little bump on the upper side of things, continuing to prove that Dynamite is in a good spot these days. So the show opened up with Will Ospreay defeating Blake Christian, and Will's big return to wrestling, to AEW Dynamite. The crowd was into it. They were super excited. This Fresno crowd was here. I have seen people criticize that the Fresno crowd was bad because they were doing what chants, which are never good. Don't get me wrong. What chants are always terrible, right? But that they didn't feel into it, that they were that they were very silent on some stuff. AEW lost this crowd. They lost this crowd as the evening went on, because this was not a bad crowd. They were into this. They were into the post-match angle. They were into the next match after that, which was the tag team match, the Bang Bang Gang versus the Death Riders. But started to lose some gas with the Gabe Kidd, Darby Allin nonsense, and I think their patience started to draw a little thin when it came to gimmickry and theatrics. Let's just put it that way. Look, Will came in and he looked great. The crowd was super excited, and what this match served to show was that he's 100% and he's ready, right? Just like his attack on the Death Riders at Revolution, and the speed, the intensity, and the shit that he was pulling was served to demonstrate that, oh, you know what? Everyone keeps saying he's going to change his offense and so on and so forth. Well, look, he's still doing high flying, spiral taps. He's still, super quick and snappy as he usually is. And the hidden blade looks like death every time. So when it came to this match, the idea here was a little of the same, but of course this was more of a squash type situation, and Blake Christian worked the neck, so again, to sort of establish that this is going to be Will's it's going to be Will's Achilles heel moving forward, but this was a lot of fun. This was a solid opener. This is exactly the type of match that the Dynamites should be built around, honestly, and with the level of excitement and whatnot. And it was a good look. It was an exciting opening. Everyone was looking forward to see Ospreay. They opened up the show with it, so they believed that this was a significant to grab people to keep him to grab people and make sure they stay and watch the rest. It was a good, excellent, in fact, opener. Not excellent in the sense that, oh, the wrestling blew my mind, but the way it was put together, the way it was handled, the opponent. I think Blake Christian was a terrific opponent for Ospreay upon his return as well. A guy that he can just have a very good match with, that can also do some spectacular stuff as well as Will Ospreay, but can lose without any issue, because he's not being pushed. So it's fine. So Will gets the win, puts him down with the hidden blade, clean, decisive, just how it was supposed to end. Then after that, Ospreay gets on the mic, cuts a little promo calling out Jon Moxley, basically saying the difference between them is that he doesn't need a weapon to snap someone's neck. He can do it with his bare hands. Obviously, Will here is very much, he really wants his pound of flesh as far as Mox goes. And then Moxley and Wheeler Yuta show up. They're doing the Heyman special here, essentially having Mox and Wheeler come out for their match. Ospreay is still there, and he immediately charges, right? He just goes for them, and they start brawling. It's on site, as they say out there in the streets, which I am very familiar with, as you can tell. As you can tell, I'm a hardened street brawler. Anyway, Will goes after everyone and uses trash cans and whatnot. The fight gets back into the ring. Ospreay starts jawing at Moxley and hits the underhooks for a Stormbreaker, but Pac rushes in, gets him into a brutalizer. And then the referees run in to break it up. Then the Bang Bang Gang make their entrance, and security is pushing Pac away. You kind of see that happening. And as they're pushing Pac away, Will Ospreay he beelines for him from the ring once he regains his senses, and they brawl all the way to the back. So as far as setting something up here, I think the path that we're taking is pretty obvious. Is that we're going to do Ospreay versus Mox, and we're likely going to do this at the I would say at Double or Nothing, with a little pit stop at Dynasty where Will is going to fight Pac, which I don't have a problem with. That's actually something terrific. It's also something that frightens me, because both of these men are just absolutely ridiculous in the ring, and they are not above doing reckless things to themselves, to each other. So I'm not exactly in confidence. Let's put it that way. That the neck thing is going to be a worry. Look, it's going to be the new Bryan Danielson in that regard, right? It's Bryan Danielson coming back after the injury and always clutching his neck when something would happen, and it just pull at your heart. You're like, oh, you son of a bitch. You know exactly what you're doing, you motherfucker. So good opener, dynamic opener, great post-match angle. I'm clapping my hands. I'm going, all right, we are into it. And if only I knew what the next 2 hours had for me, I probably wouldn't be so enthusiastic. Anyway, the Death Riders duo of Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta defeated the Bang Bang Gang duo of Rock Hard Juice Robinson and Ace Austin. It was a good match. Nothing that'll blow your mind. I thought it was a good little match. Ace Austin eats a Death Rider at the end for the win. There's not much to report here. There really wasn't much going on. People really like Juice Robinson. I guess I think that's the main thing. And once again, you've got Jon Moxley out there, practically opening up the show. Yeah, maybe not the first match, but here he is once again, the first hour of the show, and he's wrestling. That's good, right? That's good stuff. Daniel Garcia got involved as well for the Death Riders, but Austin Gunn was there to make sure that that Garcia kept his nose out of things. So yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add here. I thought this is where they started to lose the crowd, and it's not because the work was bad. I guess it just it didn't have the tools to keep the audience really engaged, especially coming off of a big, exciting return like Will Ospreay. We get a hype package for the coffin match that is going to happen later on in the evening, and Gabe Kidd. Then it cuts to Gabe Kidd who is backstage, and he's basically threatening to go after Darby Allin and saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you come meet me in the parking lot? And I'm like, why do we have to start in the parking lot? Right. Well, why don't we do the segment? No, I'm just looking at the order here. I was still going to say, why don't we jump to the segment? We've got only one segment between them, so we'll just keep going. Disregard what I just said. It doesn't. It's fine. Men in Black, neuralizer. We got Kenny Omega, who cut a post Revolution promo, basically telling Swerve, says, hey, now that you're the number one contender for the AEW World Championship, why don't you put that on the line? Fight me and put that on the line, so I can take something from you that you took something from me or whatever. And I'm sitting there, I'm going, has it been announced that Swerve Strickland was the number one contender? Because what commentary was saying is that he's rising up in the rankings, or he has leapfrogged in the rankings, right? That's what he said. And again, they're still doing rankings. I don't know if they said the word rankings. Probably not the word. I think they said contendership or something like that. They didn't use the word rankings, but it's all synonymous for rankings, folks. You know, it's like my article that I wrote on voicesofwrestling.com, which is still available, where a couple of weeks ago I wrote an article saying, hey, AEW's using rankings for their booking. They're just not telling us. They're just not publishing the rankings, right? When they were doing the whole thing, for who's next to fight MJF, and you had a whole bunch of people in the mix. You had Bandito, you had Brody King, you had Andrade, you had Kenny, you had Swerve, you had Hangman, you had a whole bunch of people, and they were all fighting each other and whatnot, or getting shots at the titles and whatnot. Like, it was a whole big thing. It was all based around rankings, and for some reason they're just too cowardly to publish rankings. I don't know what's going on, but see, we're back here again. So he's leapfrogged over a bunch of people. Yeah, you're telling me. I'd like to know who exactly he's leapfrogged over. I would be interested in that. It would make your wrestling programming even more compelling to me. But they decided to pull the rankings because a bunch of dumb blue checks on Twitter decided that they didn't understand and was breaking their brains, because they're a big bunch of fucking babies who clearly have never watched any sports in their life ever anyway. Anyway, Kenny closes his segment by saying, let's roll the dice and play a game of Risk. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put all my armies in Australia. I mean, if I'm Swerve, if I'm fighting Swerve, if Kenny is challenging me to a game of Risk and I'm Swerve, I'm like, putting all of my armies in Australia. That's the strategy, right? And then you just spread out like that. That's all there is to it. That's how you win at Risk, kids, in case you didn't know. Then this leads us to the Darby Allin Gabe Kidd coffin match, which for some reason started outside, in the beautiful Fresno sunshine. It seemed like a beautiful day. And for some reason we had to involve cars in this again. We had to get cars involved. Darby drives in with a car and they start brawling each other. And you can actually hear the crowd being extremely silent again. I've been to enough wrestling shows to really get annoyed when I have to watch a screen when I paid money to see shit live happen in front of me. I don't want to watch a screen when I'm at a show. I don't want stuff happening that isn't happening right before my eyes. If I want, otherwise I'd stay at home and watch it on my TV. That's kind of the point, but I don't want to spend too much time on that nonetheless. Anyway, they do a parking lot stunt where essentially Darby gets the upper hand on Gabe Kidd, locks him in his trunk, gets into his car, backs up, and then hits the gas and flips the car, right? He just flips the car over, and it was rigged like that. It was rigged so that the stunt, the car would just like go plunk, would just tip over, and he's going full speed. So, was it spectacular, I guess. Like, it's not something that I expect to see on a pro wrestling show, so I'm like, oh, that's surprising. But then again, it's something that I don't expect to see on a wrestling show. And then I'm like, why am I seeing this? And it's like, and look, I understand, because these are two guys who have a death wish, Darby, because Darby is Darby, and Gabe Kidd keeps telling him, I'm going to kill you. And he wants to be that violent and hardcore as well. I think the bit where the trunk suddenly opens up and Gabe Kidd tumbles out, I think that was unintentionally funny, but I had a good chuckle. It's like suddenly it's like I'm watching The Naked Gun. I thought that was humorous, and I don't think comedy was the vibe that they were going for here, but nonetheless, that's what it delivered. And then, somehow in the middle of this parking lot, right, where there's cars, and we're in Fresno, it's just like, a parking lot for an event center, right? Somehow there's a road case right there. And Darby is able then to lift Gabe Kidd and put him on the road case to wheel him into the arena. Now, I'm assuming that this was that Gabe Kidd and Darby Allin did not perform the stunt themselves. I'm assuming that that there was a cut here. Like, there was a cut. I didn't go back and watch the footage, but I feel like there was a cut when the camera was circling around the car, like it cut off and to show Darby crawling out of it, right? I can only assume, like, Darby was probably like, no, motherfucker, I'll do it, right? And maybe some producer in AEW was like, Darby, no, that our insurance doesn't cover this type of stuff specifically. And maybe Gabe Kidd is like, look, I'm nuts, I'm a madman, but maybe not that much of a madman to risk my life for a dopey wrestling angle. So anyway, they all go back to the ring, and they go do that, and Darby, there's this interminable moment where Darby opens the road case, and he has accoutrements in there, including a straitjacket. And he starts putting the straitjacket on Gabe Kidd because, you see, he's a madman, and it's so incredibly long, and it destroys the pacing and the rhythm of everything that's going on. I will say, after Gabe Kidd running around with a straitjacket, his hands completely all covered, it was an interesting visual. And at some point he actually uses the straitjacket because he's not completely tied up, so he's using the straps. He's firing them off at Darby, and he throws him into the stairs, and Darby bleeds. And then they get into the ring, and they do some moves. Darby's landing, the Scorpion Death drops, and Kidd does a power slam as well, which was pretty cool. Like, again, not a terrible match. I don't think it was a bad match. The whole angle, everything that we meant to get there, just sucked so much momentum out of something that was that's already super gimmicky, and you went and added on top of that an entire level of gimmicky, where I'm like, oh my God, like, it's a little too much now. I don't think it needed to start outside. I don't think we needed to feed, Darby's lust for, car crashes and whatnot. When I was talking about angles that felt self-indulgent, there's one right there. I think if this had just started in the ring, or the guys fighting during entrances or whatnot, whatever. Like, if we had not done the car stuff outside, then I probably would have gotten a lot more into it. But I'm gonna put it like at a what, like a 3.25 star match, which normally I think I'd be more into it, but the whole opening segment of the match just completely took me out of it, and I was like, who cares? It's like it's all just too dopey. Darby puts Gabe Kidd into the coffin for the big win, and it is what it is. It is what it is at this point. I do want to underscore that I think the guys, once we got to the actual match portion, I do think the guys worked really, really well to make this match into a match, to sort of convert that into a match. And I think they were very good at it. I think it worked out ultimately, but I was just done with all of the car crash stuff, and the 17 hours it took Darby Allin to put the straitjacket on Gabe Kidd as well. We didn't need that much. We didn't really need that much, but this all led to Darby Allin after the match grabbing a microphone and calling out MJF for the World Championship specifically. So I guess that's your Dynasty main event that we will be building towards. So, some angle advancement here. Let's continue this theme of self-indulgent angles. The Jurassic Express bus tour is something that I don't give a shit about. I don't care. I don't care about the green bus. I don't care that Luchasaurus is driving it. I don't care that they're having crazy hijinks on the way to Fresno. I couldn't give a shit. I do not care. The squirrel bit, I don't care. It's corny. It's dopey. It's sports entertainment nonsense. This is the kind of stuff that we have been steering far away from for months upon months, and created such a compelling show week after week. And then we're doing automobile stunts, and now we're having road trips with the Dinosaur Man and Jungle Jack Perry feeding nuts to squirrels. I have no use for this. And I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry if you enjoyed it. All the more power to you. But this is not the kind of stuff that I look for in my professional wrestling. This is too dopey. Anyway, they arrive and the Young Bucks meet up with them, and they cut a promo, and Dinosaur Man says bitch because of Kazuchika Okada. See, like it's out. Like you didn't need this for this main event. You didn't need to set all this up for a cool trios match with the Bucks and Jack Perry versus Chaos from New Japan. We didn't need it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I got to move on. Then we get the Swerve Strickland in-ring promo where Nana's in the ring. Nana's in the ring alone. He introduces Swerve then, who has modified his theme song. Did I dream this? But he added some violin to it, right? If I'm not mistaken. And he's added like dangerous. And all of these little, not all of these things, but particularly adding dangerous to the theme to hammer home, the subtlety hammer, to make sure that you understand that this is the most dangerous man in AEW, is again something that reeks of the other place, right? And Swerve was quick to deride the other place in his promo when he was talking about everywhere he had been before getting into AEW and saying I was being stuck in developmental, or something to that effect. I don't remember if it was stuck, exactly the word he used, but he mentioned development. We all know what he's talking about, and he's deriding it, but here he is doing adjustments to a theme song to make sure that we all understand that he is dangerous, and he is dangerous. And I'm like, oh my God. There was a time that people would just naturally call Swerve, and he would occasionally mention it. I'm the most dangerous man in AEW, and people would believe it because he'd do home invasions, because he would assault a 17-year-old, at his home, and bloody him up, like cut him up in a wrestling ring, right? Like, we would buy it. You don't have to tell us over and over. You don't have to add that to your theme song, and I kind of think it's corny. And I thought this promo was a little corny. I even thought that Swerve took a little step back here, where I found like his promos had become full of gravity and a form of realism. And when he spoke, there was something authentic about it. Now, like he's back to being a cartoony villain. And he's supposed to be the most dangerous man in AEW, but he's sitting there with the lighting and, and smirking, going, ha, 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 ha. It's like, oh, fuck off, Swerve. Just be yourself. You don't have to put on this much for you to be convincing. And then on top of that, like the whole thing with this promo is talking about power. It's all about power, and he wants power. So Kenny Omega, you want my number one contendership, and he himself, like that, I thought was interesting. Oh, turns out I'm the number one contender. I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, high five. Me neither, Swerve. I think none of us knew you were the number one contender. Kenny figured it out minutes after Revolution did to tape his promo, but no one else got the memo clearly. So Swerve essentially says, well, this is all about power. So if I'm going to put up my number one contendership, which has power, well, you have to put something else, something of yours. And the only thing of power that you have is your EVP status. So it's going to be next week, number one contendership versus EVP, versus Kenny Omega's EVP status. Now, I am not going to get upset or angry over something that hasn't happened yet. I'm going to save that for next week, okay? But I will preface this. If anything, this is going to be the prologue to next week if Swerve wins. I have no interest in another authority figure angle in AEW. In wrestling in general, okay, to begin with, an evil authority figure angle, no thank you. We had one with the Bucks and it was bad. It was bad. Why is it bad? Because they always end up not making sense and poking holes. You can poke holes through them because the holes are the size of fucking hula hoops. Okay? I'm not going to get mad this week. We're not getting mad about this week. I'm giving you a preamble. Get ready next week. If the most dangerous man in AEW next week wins the EVP status, I am going to have a fit. Now, that being said, I am assuming that Kenny Omega is going to win. I think the vision is now a little clearer where Kenny just might end up becoming the number one contender for the world title, but for Double or Nothing, because frankly, MJF Kenny Omega is a marquee match for a big pay-per-view like Double or Nothing, as opposed to, the B show. And so doing Darby versus MJF is absolutely fine. So to be continued, but I was not impressed with this promo. I'm not impressed with the angle that they're going that they're going for the match next week either. I just hope Swerve loses. I don't want an authority figure, an evil authority figure angle again. I was saying at the start of the review, right? We'll see if this week is just like a one-off, just a little reset button, and next week everything will be course corrected, or we'll start drifting off if this continues next week, and if they have Swerve win and we have an evil authority figure angle once again, it'll be more than a drift. It'll be like a complete hard turn right off a cliff. Speedball Mike Bailey defeated Dangerous Mark Davis. They keep calling him Dunkzilla, but it's written Dangerous on his trunks. Mark, I got your back. I see what you're doing here. Commentary's still calling you Dunkzilla. Not me, brother. I see what you're trying to do. I got you. Dangerous Mark Davis. I thought this match was really good. I thought this was a lot of fun. The big man, little man match, but in a different way, because Mark Davis is not your typical big man who will just do big power moves. He does all sorts of awesome stuff. He's a great worker, and he pairs perfectly with a guy like Mike Bailey, and Davis just like completely pummels him throughout the match. Bailey plays the hits, the running shooting star press, the triangle moonsault. There's this great, probably my favorite spot of the match, maybe of the whole show, maybe, was Mark Davis doing that slam. They're on the apron and he lifts Bailey up and he does like this slam from a suplex position right on the apron. That was awesome. A little later on, Bailey does a beautiful shooting star press. Davis, continues like paintbrushing him at some point in the match as well. Just tremendous stuff. Huge BT bomb by Davis as well. He lands the running lariat and the pile driver, but Bailey can be put away. He does the moonsault knees and then lands the ultimo weapon for the win. I thought this was terrific. I really thought this match was terrific. And look, you want to tell me that this crowd was a bad crowd? I challenge that notion with this match because they were into it. They were into this match. They just wanted to see some good old fashioned AEW brand action, and not all the dopey stuff that we had seen previous to this. This was good stuff, folks. Like this was a good match. Like 3.5 stars. This was good, and I had a nice long breath. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, okay, maybe the second hour here is going to elevate everything, and it did a pretty good job. Don't get me wrong; it wasn't the second hour was good, but it wasn't necessarily it did not something where I'd sit here and said it saved the show. No, but it was. I found it was on a good level nonetheless. We get a pre-tape from MJF. It is we're back to Sunday post Revolution. After the match, he's still covered in coagulated blood. He's sitting on the floor with his title. He calls himself the greatest of all time, Mr. Revolution, a litany of nicknames. The Wolf of Wrestling, the Salt of the Earth, Big Hebrew. I'm sure I'm forgetting some. And saying the adrenaline is wearing off. He's starting to feel everything that happened in the match now. But he says it's all worth it because, of course, he is still the world champion. And Hangman is off the board. And he is in the mid-card forever. And then gets the cameraman to set up that he's going to Disney World. An excellent promo from Max. Once again, these post-match, pre-recorded pay-per-view promos that MJF cuts are systematically great. Every single one of them. Every time he cuts one of these, it is excellent stuff. And this was no exception. It truly was great. Then we get the band back together. Chaos from over there in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Kazuchika Okada, Rocky Romero, and Trent are all there. And they run a very quick promo hyping up their match. Then we get footage of Renee Paquette discovering that Toni Storm had been attacked earlier in the day and was not medically cleared to compete. She was supposed to fight Marina Shafir in a no holds barred match off of the angle with Ronda Rousey that happened on at Revolution, and but for some reason Toni wasn't there, and at the moment that I'm recording, I don't know why. I don't know if she was injured, if there was if this was all part of the plan to begin with, to have Mina Shirakawa sub for her, or if there's something else going on with Toni, if she's hurt, if she's got another type of medical condition. I don't know. Like I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I haven't seen any reports on that front, but Mina basically is there in the pre-tape that they did the earlier today segment, and Mina is there. Oh, Toni. While fucking Luther is having conniptions at the door, he's fucking useless. So that essentially transforms the match to Mina Shirakawa versus Marina Shafir, and Mina defeats Marina Shafir in this no holds barred situation. Mina comes down with a barbed wire bat. Was not real barbed wire, in case you're wondering, but at least it wasn't the centerpiece of everything here. And two things I want to point out straight off the bat. Mina didn't do her little dance, and commentary pointed it out too. She didn't do her little dance. She was all business because, hey, this person over here, it hurt my friend, so I'm coming to kick her ass. And I appreciated that she didn't do her little accordion dance. Then she gets to the ring and uses the bat, but Marina Shafir gets in control shortly thereafter, and the bat is in the ring. And Marina, like I had pointed out in my review for Revolution, where I talk about how I find she's found like her voice, her connection with the audience, how to gain heat, which was always an issue for her. I found like she's really, really good at it now. She sees the bat and she says, I don't need no stinking bat, or something to that effect. She says, I don't need no bat. Or maybe I do. Like she picks up the bat like immediately after. I was like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. That's funny. That's good. And it works in the context as well, where she's like being cocky. This was messy in to be expected, but also messy in, ways where you're like, oh, well, Mina Shirakawa is a downgrade from Toni Storm in this circumstance. But this was not an utter train wreck. It wasn't, it didn't devolve into a situation where you're like, oh my God, what the fuck am I watching? It was good. It was I'd say, not necessarily a great instance in this litany of great plunder matches from AEW's women's division. The sentences are hard. Not a great entry in the litany of plunder matches of AEW women's division. Thank you very much. I did it. I had to prove to myself I could do it. But enjoyable for what it was. I thought it was pretty good, despite the fact that, man, Shafir completely blew the table spot. Completely blew it. She did a back suplex off the apron onto a table on the floor, and she ate all of it. Like, she landed flat on the table, and Shafir just ate shit, just completely flat backed on the floor. Oh my God. And then they continued as if Shirakawa had eaten the table and Shafir was okay, when it really should have been the opposite. But these days there's a lot of, we got to stick to the plan, as opposed to, oh, well, look, this shit happened, let's improvise. They really could have improvised here, but it didn't happen. Look, maybe, I don't know, like a 3-star match, 3.25. I'm having a little trouble finding its sweet spot, because there's still some things that looked a little strange. There's some offense that looked a little soft. I think the phony barbed wire bat at first was, just don't do it then. Like, don't do it. And it's like the glass this weekend. And it's not because I'm saying, oh, well, you have to use the real barbed wire, you have to hurt yourself, I'm looking for people to maim each other in my wrestling. That's not it. But if you use the fake, you use the substitute, like the glass, it was sugar glass that was used at Revolution, and with the phony barbed wire bat, if you're not going to commit to using the real thing, just don't do it. And I'm okay with that. I wasn't going to complain that there was no glass at Revolution, just like I'm not going to complain. I wouldn't have complained if there wasn't a barbed wire bat. It's just like, now that you brought it out and you used it, I'm like, fake. It's like, and it takes me out. It takes me out of this idea, this concept that I'm supposed to be watching a fight, and they're supposed to be convincing me that this is an actual fight, and it takes me out of it. What do you want from me? Anyway, Shafir, they both look good here, but we're grading on curves here in both these circumstances, both for Mina and for Shafir. I think Mina looked good despite, stuff happening. I don't think Mina is all that great a wrestler. I think she's a very average wrestler. I think she did well here. And Shafir has very silently been improving. I think she's finding a lot more confidence. I think she's finding a niche in which she can highlight her very particular style of offense and make it work. And if she can make it work with Mina, as opposed to with, Toni Storm, who is a great pro wrestler, if she can make it work with Mina, who can be very 50-50, very on and off, well, I think there's more to her than we're led to believe. I think I think she's quietly getting better in ring as well. I thought that Mina winning was weird. I thought the booking decision was strange. I think that's what it means. Like, oh, well, Tony was supposed to win. And that would make sense because then you punctuate the end of the feud. You're like, okay, we're done. And the babyface won convincingly and we can all move on. But Mina's not involved in this feud. So it was very strange for her to pick up a win where I would have seen Marina picking up the win here off of Mina, who is maybe not in the same lane as her, as Marina, but Mina picked up the win. Now, does that mean that Mina's going to get a push? We'll see how things go, but it was a weird decision. It was a weird booking decision. I don't quite understand it. Andrade's backstage with Renee Paquette. Suddenly, John Cruz shows up. Apparently, he's everyone's errand boy now. He does errands for MJF when they're in Arena Mexico, and now he's doing errands for Don Callis, who is not there, who is joining us via the magic of FaceTime on an iPhone. And basically, John Cruz is giving Andrade a suitcase full of money. Andrade's like, I don't want your money because you work for MJF and I want to come after MJF for the world title. And Don Callis is like, brother, listen. Because of what we did, MJF is giving us a substantial amount of money and, accept this large cash payment on behalf of the Don Callis family, right? And he acknowledges there's a conflict of interest between him and MJF. And we being the Don Callis family, have agreed to handle the Darby Allin problem. So Andrade is a little reluctant, but takes the money as well. And that leads us to the main event where the Young Bucks and Jack Perry defeat Kazuchika Okada, Rocky Romero, and Trent Beretta. This was a lot of fun. This was tremendous. It really was a good time. I've also seen more crazy trios, party style matches, but this was a lot of fun. It's an easy 3 3/4 star match. I think it was the best match of the evening. It was a lot of fun. Great babyface, explosive action from the Bucks and whatnot. Really turning babyface was the best thing was really the best thing to happen for them. They've been a lot of fun since transitioning back. There is a spot where all three heels are holding the baby faces in tombstone piledriver positions, all three of them at the same time. And each of the baby faces then bite the penises of each of the heels. Yes, we're doing the Jack Perry Kazuchika Okada spot again. And Super Kick Party sets up a BTE trigger into an assisted knee from a running knee, I should say, from Jack Perry on Rocky Romero for the win. So everyone high fives, everyone is happy. They leave. Jack Perry leaves and the Bucks are left alone in the ring. And they talk about how they blew it at Revolution. Like that was the term they actually used. We blew it and we feel bad. And, I went to celebrate my birthday after apparently Matt Jackson and MJF share a birthday. So good for them. And went out to celebrate my birthday. I couldn't look at my family in the eyes. And he says, but then our dad looked at us and said, you guys, I'm so proud of you. Keep your head up high and so on and so forth. We're proud of you. You guys are not losers. And then when I realized that we were doing a talk segment and then that's probably how we were going to end the show, I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, Edge is going to come out, isn't he? And of course, Adam Copeland comes out, followed by Christian Cage, though. And we get a patented Edge pep talk, which he just says a lot of things, talks way too much, uses way too many words to get to a very simple destination. Even takes the opportunity to put his wife over, who doesn't even work for the company, and he basically comes out to announce like, you guys don't give up, but you're not next in line, we are. And then he points to the Trons. He says, in Vancouver, it's going to be us versus FTR for the titles. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why did we come out to try to tease and set up the Bucks versus Cage and Christian, right? Cope and Christian. Why did we do that? We got the FTR. Now, down the line, sure. And there's one, look, even though I thought that this whole spiel with Edge, I'm not an Edge guy, okay? This Cope stuff bothers me, and I'm still waiting to see what kind of positive he brings to AEW moving forward, because right now I kind of feel he's a net negative. We've talked about it in the past. We're not relitigating this right now. We probably will, though, because he's back on my TV conducting these long-ass Cope segments, which feel a little self-indulgent. Because then you got Christian Cage, who's right there, and Christian Cage, he's still a scumbag. He's still I know these titles are personal for you, but for me, it means winning the titles means I'm going to make a whole lot of more money. So I'm like, yes, thank you, And then when FTR comes in and they, and for some reason, the heels attack a 4-on-2 situation. Cuckoo. For some reason, they hit the ring and they get beat up. Everyone's landing moves, but Christian Cage just like kicks, I think it was Dax right in the balls. It's just like flagrant low blow. Christian's like, fuck this shit. And I appreciate that. That is actually fun. But the one positive here, there's one thing that I will hand it to Edge and Christian here. God damn it. Cope and Christian. Okay. I will hand out here. They are there face to face with one of the greatest tag teams of all time in the Bucks. Arguably, maybe even the greatest tag team of all time. They're right there. And they're still at the peak of their powers. They're still very much the Young Bucks. And they're there and they are teasing the anticipation of having the Bucks versus Cope and Christian. And I'm like, okay, that's really interesting. And I can get behind that because meanwhile, their other pals, the Hardy Boys and the Dudleys had they were too busy rekindling past glories in a terrible match. Whereas Christian and Cope, I will give them the credit to at least be still in the mix, still like actively trying to be a part of the scene. And, I say trying to be a part of it as if it's a struggle. They are part of the scene, right? And going like, hey, you know what? We want to wrestle the Bucks. We want this on our resume. And I can appreciate that. That I can absolutely get behind. As opposed to them just being complacent and going off to do, glory, trying to relive old glories that have long passed them since, and so on and so forth, right? So to a degree, that is a much more respectable way of approaching things than, what the 4 other guys did. Nonetheless, like I mentioned it quickly, FTR come out after and they, Stoke tries to talk and he gets cut off and it's all very stunted and staged and it has Copeland written all over it. And then, the FTR that has been around for months at this point, that have been such great heels, they would have never rushed the ring in a 4-on-2 situation. They would have faked it, but then they would have pulled off and smiled and smirked like the cocky bastards that they are. Because that's the kind of, they're smarter than this is what I'm trying to say. All of this felt very Copelandish, right down to the Bucks and CNC each picking up a title, but and having the other guy, having 2 guys pick up one same belt, right, is what I'm trying to say. And then staring at each other and then giving not a tug of war, but little until the Bucks sort of relented. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. Why? You guys and gals and non-binary pals know I am not a fan of Adam Copeland in AEW. I really am not. I'm a fan of Christian Cage. I'm a fan of the Bucks. I'm a fan of FTR. But this one, and the thing is that this guy's instincts as far as pro wrestling goes, I don't trust them. I can already see his fingerprints over all of this segment. And don't get me wrong, I know the Bucks can have very, very questionable instincts as well. They're very good at that as well. So, they were probably just gobbling this shit up as well. And they were very likely even suggesting things. Maybe they came up with the idea of the little belt tug of war. I'm like, yuck. It all annoys me. And this is how we ended the show. All right. The streak is dead. There we go. Long live the streak. The streak is dead. But look, again, as we wrap up this episode of Dynamite, which really wasn't terrible. It wasn't a bad episode. It just was, I don't think it was necessarily good. It wasn't bad. The streak is done. As we wrap this all up, this is the thing that I want you all to take away, to make sure that I'm very clear. I'm absolutely not saying that's it. AEW's in the pits, throw it in the bin. We're done. That's not it. We're just on another track for this week. Maybe we missed the right turn at Albuquerque, right? And we'll get right back on it next week, and everything will be fine. And this episode here, the March 18, 2026 edition of Dynamite, will exist in its own little cosm for the rest of eternity, and we'll never think about it again, because we're going to go off onto a regular strip of Dynamites which hit the same highs and the same levels of excitement and must see vibes that we've been getting for months at this point. So those are my thoughts. That's my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you have enjoyed it. Even if you don't, leave a like anyway. Or leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or a 5-star rating on Spotify. I'm hoping my internet will get back into service by the stream time tonight, Thursday. I usually stream on Thursday evenings here on the YouTube channel. Hopefully I will be able to get that in order, but no promises. I don't know how, fingers crossed. I don't think so. But if I don't stream on Thursday, I will find an opportunity to stream maybe Friday, or once my internet is back, we will have ourselves a little surprise stream or something. Count on it. It'll be all right. It'll be fine. Otherwise, I'll be back next week once everything is back in order, and business as usual moving forward. Listen, thank you all for joining me today. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.